So let's talk about the propaganda. So understanding today's situation, the Palestinians are subjected to cruelties, they're subjected to the killings, they're subjected to the police system. How did it get to this point? This project exists because the Palestinians are subjected to the cruelties that we see today. How did it get to this point? Early 20th century, Palestinians they weren't even a majority. They were seeking refuge. How did they get to the point that they gain superiority in a land that's not theirs? And they get to a point where they're able to subject these onto another person. The answer lies a couple chapters ago when we talked about the Zionist movement. And in the Zionist movement, there is an incentive. The idea that the Jews need to create a safe land and a sanctuary for themselves, a refuge from the discrimination that they're facing in Europe. They have an idea, they have an incentive. How are they going to make this idea into action? It gets to they use propaganda. That is the way that all regimes get to this point. They use propaganda to further their own cause and simultaneously damage another opposing cause. So we get to the point where they're trying to incentivize this. People like Alex Keith, a clergyman from Scotland, and William Blackstone, a Catholic advocate, respond to and send letters out open to international countries, the British, to talk about how the Jews need a land of their own. And in Alexander Keith's book, The Land of Israel According to the Covenant of Abraham, he says, a people of a country, even as their own land, is subsequently to be shown, is in a great measure a country without a people. And William Blackstone advocates that why shall not the powers under the Treaty of Berlin in 1878 gave to Bulgaria to the Bulgarians, to Serbia to the Serbians, and now Palestine back to the Jews. These provinces, as well as Romania, Montenegro, and Greece, were wrested from the Turks and given to their natural owners. Does not Palestine as rightfully belong to the Jews? So now this fruition is coming into action. They're making a plan. They're creating ways to get their idea of a Jewish state land into reality. And despite evidence proving, so this propaganda line comes up, a land without people for people without land. And this line denotes the land for our people, the land without people, is referring to Palestine. And this comes from the records of travelers who went to Palestine, recorded their experiences there, and talked about it was barren land. And the people that were there were barbaric. They weren't a civilization. Therefore, they weren't a quote-unquote people. As such, this was a land without people. And the Jews were people without land. They needed their own space. They needed their own nation. So the land comes into fruition and becomes very popular and incentivizes the Jews, the Zionists, to push their agenda forward. And despite evidences from David Siegfried and Robert Sassoon, who were other travelers talking about the rich culture of Palestine and the people there, and that they ignore all of that. And they use literary evidence from Mark Twain, and in his book, The Innocents Abroad. And in his book, he talks about how the land was barren. The people there were savages, they were barbaric. And this evidence is used continuously in the Zionist propaganda schemes to justify their colonial ambitions. And this line persists despite all this evidence beforehand, because this is the nature of propaganda, to use evidence that supports your cause. And to ignore the ones that don't really concern us, and the ones that might damage our claims, let's ignore those and let's focus on the ones that will encourage our actions and encourage our mission forward. This results, with this being in mind, the nature of propaganda is to influence another group of people, and that happened to be the British. The Zionists had a phrase, a land without people for people without land. This convinced the British to get involved and to calm the waves of anti-Semitism. This was a way for them to deal with the tensions of the Jews in Europe, as well as gain their own political and economic gain as well. So this is a benefit for the British. And the Balfour Declaration, as we discussed before, was an initiative from the British in 1917 to create specifically Palestine as the homeland for the Jewish community. Israel was not set up to be a land where the native inhabitants were not Jewish. The intention was that this had to be a land for the Jews and the Jews only. And how are they supposed to do that? To get rid of the inhabitants of the land for the betterment and ease of their cause. With the Balfour Declaration, the immigration rose. They needed a way to incentivize their action. They needed more people. They needed support. So the Jewish population rose from 30,000 in 1933 to 60,000 in 1936. So in a period of 3 years, population rose by a lot. An increased influx of Jews immigrating to Palestine. Obviously, this was not well received by the Palestinians. They were being deprived of their resources, they were being deprived of their home. So the King Crane Commission was set underway to gain opinions and to make amendments to the mandate so that everyone can benefit and everyone will gain from this Balfour Declaration and everyone will live in harmony. Of course, through opinions of the Palestinians were very opposed to this. The people of the King Crane Commission sent modifications to the mandate. This is how you can change it to benefit everybody. But these modifications were not taken into consideration. The mandate equipped Jews with resources to establish prominent rule in the land at the cost of the natives. As a result, created the conditions that made it possible for the Jewish minority to gain superiority. So they weren't in that many numbers in the first place, but because of the interference of the British, they were able to gain ownership of the land and create a place for them and them alone. So the British got involved, but after their whole mess and the tensions and the wars arising in Palestine at the time, the UN got involved and they announced Proposal 181. Now what is Proposal 181? It was a revised proposal where Palestine was to be divided into separate Jewish Arab states. And this is the idea of the two-state solution that comes up, having their own space. But as we'll see later on, that this solution does not hold. So the Jews who occupied 6% of the land now own, with the Resolution 181, 55% of the territory, cutting the Arabs from their key agricultural lands, seaports, education, farms, their homes. They were given more. And now, if we do the math, the 94%, the remaining 94%, now we're now subjected to 45% of their own land. And this became the creation of the Nakba, the largest displacement of Palestinians. And it displaced 1 million Palestinians out of their home, and it destroyed 500 towns, all in the name of occupying a land they wholeheartedly believe they deserve at the cost of others. Today, about 1 million Palestinians within Israel are considered a minority within their own home. And the minority group of the Zionists, of the Jews, were able to gain superiority, and to maintain their superiority, enacted laws that discriminated against the Palestinians, all on the basis that they're not Jewish, and all on the basis on their ethnicity. Yes, so that's the chapter of propaganda, and that's how the Jews were able to gain superiority, the Zionists were able to get superiority in their land. I'd like to call up the next speaker to talk about the bombings and the homes and hospitals and schools.
Assalamualaikum everyone, can you all hear me? Okay, perfect. So my name is Aiza, and today I'll be presenting Chapter 10, the bombing of homes, hospitals, and schools. So I'd like to start with a quote about why exactly homes are being targeted. So in Palestine, homes shelter life by sustaining a collective form of time, memory, and connection to family and land. The destruction or invasion of a home therefore generates deep insecurity